James Monroe was born on April 28, 1758, in Westmoreland County, Virginia, the second of 5 children. His father and uncle were very active in local politics and instilled in young James a deep distrust of the British Crown. At age 16, James was orphaned and left to care for his younger brothers and provide for their future stability. His uncle, Joseph Jones, provided for his education. Jones, who was a very prominent judge in King George County, encouraged his nephew to look towards a career in law and politics. With the encouragement of his uncle, James enrolled in the College of William and Mary in the colonial Virginia capital of Williamsburg in 1774. He was young and impressionable, being away from home for the first time. He quickly joined the local Masonic lodge, where politics were the chief topic, and he became friends with some of the more radical students on campus. At the time that James Monroe arrived in Williamsburg, revolutionary fervor gripped the city. Monroe's involvement in revolutionary actions began on June 24th, when he joined a group of 23 students under the command of Theodoric Bland, Jr. in a raid on the governor's palace. The group's objective was to seize confiscated stores of weaponry and return them to the town's magazine, where the citizens could control their use when fighting finally erupted. The group succeeded in seizing 200 muskets and 300 swords from the palace, which were turned over to the Williamsburg militia. In the spring of 1776, James and his friend John Mercer made the decision to enlist in the 3rd Virginia Infantry, commanded by Colonel Hugh Mercer. James quickly was promoted to the rank of lieutenant, as he was considered a skilled rifleman. In August 1776, the 3rd and 9th Virginia regiments were ordered by General George Washington to join his forces in New York. From the moment Monroe and the 3rd Virginia arrived in New York, he would see almost constant battle over the next 3 years. He was present for and participated in the battles of Harlem Heights, White Plains, Trenton, Brandywine, Germantown, and Monmouth Courthouse. He was also a part of George Washington's famous crossing of the Delaware, and he was camped with the Continental Army at Valley Forge during that brutal winter of 1778. He was severely wounded at the Battle of Trenton and nearly died when a British musket ball severed an artery in his shoulder. Only the quick actions of a patriotic doctor saved his life. Some of the field reports documenting enemy movements that Lieutenant Monroe wrote his commanding officers still survive. During his service in the Army, Monroe made the acquaintance of a young French officer, and the two became lifelong friends. That officer was the Marquis de Lafayette. After Monroe was wounded at Trenton, he was promoted to the rank of captain. He spent several months recuperating and then served as a recruiter for the Army back in Virginia. He held out hope that he would be awarded his own command in the Army, but General Washington had far more deserving officers than he had troops for them to lead. Monroe left the Army soon after and was commissioned a lieutenant colonel in the Virginia State Militia. He was given permission to raise his own regiment to be employed in the defense of the state. However, the regiment never came to be, as recruitment was almost impossible. In the meantime, Monroe was put on active duty in Williamsburg. He remained there until December, when he finally decided that there was no hope of securing his own command. He returned to the College of William and Mary with the intention of finishing his studies. In 1782, as the war was ending, Monroe took his first step toward the career path that would become his passion for the rest of his life: public service. He was elected to the House of Delegates from King George County. Immediately, many of the revered elder statesmen of Virginia, like George Mason and Richard Henry Lee, took notice of the young veteran, and it was obvious that he was on the rise. In 1786, Monroe married New Yorker Elizabeth Courtwright, and they moved to Fredericksburg, where their first child was born. Monroe began his law practice in the circuit court system. Although his military days were over, James Monroe had found a new way to fight for his country through the emerging world of national politics. The principles and values instilled in him during long years of war and revolution would stay with him for the rest of his life and would be a key factor in the opinions and causes that he would champion as a congressman, senator, governor, Secretary of State and War, and eventually President of the United States.